Hey everyone, it's Adam D with the RVA Returners, bringing you another episode in our mini-series of meta decks as we enter the Opus 7 competitive season. This one is a little bit of a bonus. It wasn't one we were originally going to talk about, but we wanted to throw it in there because it's such a fun list. Today I'm going to be talking about the Mono Fire Warrior of Light list. If you're interested in playing an aggressive deck, or you're interested in getting into the competitive meta on a budget, this is a very, very good option for you. I'm not sure where I would put it in a ranking of top competitive decks. May not crack that list just yet, but I have been playing it a lot at our locals, and it's been doing pretty well. And the more I play this list, the better I think it actually is. So we want to kind of include it in the conversation of competitive meta lists here. I'm sure that if you're playing in these tournaments, you're going to see it somewhere or another, so it's one you'll want to look out for. So I'm going to walk you through the forwards, the summons, and the backups, and anything else in the deck, one by one. Here we go. So I'm going to start right away talking about the the three most important forwards in the deck that kind of make it really pop and that add a lot of synergy. Number one is Light WoL. This card, he's really, really positioned well in this list because he's so efficient. He does two of the things that he does very well. When WoL enters a field, look at the top five, or you reveal the top five of your deck, add a job Warrior Light from among them to your hand. You're usually going to hit on that because if you're running a list similar to the one we're looking at here, you're running between 15 plus Warrior of Light forwards. So mathematically, you're going to find one in those top five more often than not, and you get to add it to your hand. And then when WoL is put from the field into the break zone, you choose a job Warrior of Light at cost 3 or less in your break zone, play it onto the field. So that lets you recur a Lunith, which is really important for this deck strategy. Lets you recur Warrior of Light Starter, which can be a very good card defensively or offensively. Lets you recur just something. That's good on its own. I mean, you've got Soul as an option there too, but having recursion is something Fire hasn't really had a lot of in the past. And that's a little bit of a theme in this deck the way I've got it. I'm going to run it out here. So WoL is a good card. We're running 3 of him. You're never really sad to see him unless you've already got one in hand, but that's not going to happen too often, hopefully. The next big piece here, and high on the power level, is Gadot. So the forwards of cost 2 you control gain 2,000 power, and then when he attacks, you get to choose a forward, and it gains haste until end of turn. So this is an aggressive deck. It has a lot of 2 CP forwards, or cost 2 forwards. So Gadot's going to make everything bigger, and that's kind of a sub-theme of this deck. You want to hit your opponent really fast, and you also want to just out-power them with your forwards. So Gadot helps you in both of these arenas. He's a good card to find early. He's not bad to find late, as he just forces aggression. If you're looking at a control-heavy player, if you're fearing a Shantoto, Gadot's a card to keep back in your hand because you might have an early push, a Shantoto comes down, and the 2 or 3 forwards that you were getting in with, they're gone now. You can drop a Gadot, and then usually every card you play, every forward you play after that is going to come in with haste if he sticks around. And the last high power forward we're going to look at is Aegis. So Aegis is a new card from Opus 7. The job Warrior Light forwards other than Aegis you control gain Brave, and when he enters the field, you get to play a forward at cost 2 from your hand onto the field. Aegis is very good. I think when you look at this card, you know you're looking at a very powerful card, but he plays as good as he looks. We're going to see shortly the package of forwards that he gets, and he just plays perfectly with Gadot. He's letting you get a cost 2 from your hand for free, and Gadot is going to make that cost 2 really, really powerful. Moving down the line here, we've got Lunith. He's a very powerful Warrior of Light. He's one that if for some reason, now Alcid is a card that's fallen out of the meta just a little bit, but if you're fearing an Alcid, Lunith can actually help you get around those effects with his second ability. Most of the time you're looking at Lunith and you're saying, my fire forwards and my Warrior Lights are going to get bigger. That's the right way to read Lunith, but don't sleep on his second ability. Dull a total of 3 active fire forwards or fire backups, and to choose a forward and deal it 2. I've found it's more relevant just to be able to dull the things that I want to dull, but that last 2,000 of damage can also take care of a Viking or some other cards that might already be marked for damage. So Lunith is good. He fits really well in this deck. He's good to pull back with WoL. He's a 3 of in this list. Every card I've mentioned so far is a 3 of. These are all cards that you really want to see over the course of the game at some point in time. All right, now we get into the package of 2 CP forwards. This starter Warrior of Light is just such a powerful card. So first, he's going to say if you control 4 or more forwards, he gains haste. Well, in this deck, that's not that hard to do. This is a very efficient forward package that we're looking at. So you usually have 4. I would say Warrior of Light is usually best to play when he is your 4th forward. And that's on a turn that you really want to push a lot of damage through. Aegis helps you be aggressive. He helps you keep Warrior of Light and other Job Warrior of Light cards as defenders. He's giving them all brave. And, you know, if your opponent has 1 or 2 blockers, maybe one is a little bit better than your forwards, but Warrior Light is going to come, and when he enters the field, all the forwards you control gain 2,000 power until the end of turn. I like that ability, especially that's the card that kind of makes him feel like a blowout sometimes. So keep your eye on this one as we go through the rest of the list. He plays in some really, really specific times in a way that can kind of swing the game in your favor. We're going to move into the first card that we're not running 3 of is 2 CP Warrior. When Warrior attacks, all the fire forwards you control gain 2,000 power until end of turn. So if we had another Warrior of Light option, maybe we put him in here, but the reason I like this Warrior card is because he helps you stay aggressive, and that plus 2,000 power is just, it starts to really add up. Let's say you've already got Gato out on field. This Warrior's coming down as a 7,000 power. Gato attacks, then you get to attack with Warrior, he's 7, and when he attacks, now he's 9. So he's a lot quiet. He looks like a quiet forward. He's a lot louder than he actually is, and he helps you kind of get that push. Staying in the theme of fire is just sort of like the fire's growing and it's out of control here. So that's a good card. 2 of, I think, is the right call. We're also going to look at 2 Lednar. Lednar is just a very sticky forward. Plays nice with Gato. Very good if you need the game to slow down a little bit. He's free off Aegis as well, or she's free. So, I mean, this is just a good card here. I think if you're running a fire deck, you probably consider running Lednar. And I'll read it here for you. When she blocks or is blocked, if your opponent doesn't pay 2, can't be broken this turn, and when Lednar is chosen by a summoner ability of your opponent, if they don't pay 2, Lednar cannot be broken this turn. I'm surprised we don't see more effects like that, but to be honest, I think they belong in a card like Lednar because for 2 CP at 5,000 power, if this was any bigger, it would just be so obnoxious to deal with. So it's a very good card to have. Force your opponent to deal with it and just pay a little bit of a tax. Not broken, but fits in here really well. The last forward here, we've got 3 Soul. If you control a Job Warrior of Light other than Soul, Soul gains 2,000 power and haste. So this is kind of the 1-2 punch that Opus 7 brought with the Aegis Soul combo, but Soul really he cares about any Warrior of Light, so Soul can come down when you have a Luneth, and then that Soul's going to be a 2 CP 8k, it's going to get +2, and then another 1 from Luneth, and it's got haste. So you could really call this deck a Soul deck because you want all your forwards to sort of behave in the manner Soul is behaving, coming down, swinging right away, attacking into something, and not being too concerned if you see a block because you've got some power level that's been elevated from other cards. So the summon package here is not too crazy. What we're trying to do with our summons is deal with some removal and find some card advantage. And I'll walk you through each one of these. In my list, I have 9 summons, starting off with 3 Belias the Gigas. This is no strangers. This is an Opus 2 summon that's been around for a long time. It's one of the most efficient summons in the entire game. It's a good EX burst. You choose a forward, it gains 1,000 power, it gains haste and first strike, and then you get to draw a card back. So I kind of love this card for a lot of reasons. I play a lot with it, as I'm sure many people have. And, you know, having haste is sometimes the best keyword here. Having first strike is sometimes the best, and then that extra 1,000 power is sometimes the best. Any of them are good, and drawing a card makes this kind of a summon that you want to see at any time. So I like to run the 3. If you want to drop it down to 2, I'd say that's fine. That's a playstyle choice, but you definitely want to have this card in your list. Next, we're going to look at a card that I like. The more I play with it, the more I like. It's Opus 6 Bahamut EX. You get to choose a forward, deal it 10,000 damage, and then you take a point of damage from Bahamut. EX burst don't trigger from this damage. So I'm not too worried about missing an EX burst because between Belias and Bahamut, these are the only ones in the deck as I have it listed. What I like this card for is just I'm trying to get my forwards a little bit bigger than yours, and if you've got something out there that's 10,000 power or more, I'm not going to be able to really get around that. But I can with Bahamut. It's an option that I want in the deck, and Brynhildr is a good alternative here. If you're not super aggressive and you don't like the idea of taking a point of damage in an aggro deck where you're already potentially not playing defense and taking damage, you could put Brynhildr in here, get the same EX burst, and be fine. But I think this is kind of a good emergency card that can push a forward that you normally wouldn't be able to deal anything to and get it off the table. I also like running 2 of the Opus 4 Bahamut. Choose a forward, deal 8,000 damage. If it's put from the field in the break zone, remove it from the game instead. Removing it from the game is a really important clause. It's really, really good sometimes to get something out of the game and miss a break zone trigger when it goes into the break zone. Bahamut's also 8,000 power, 8,000 damage is just puts a lot of things in range right now. I've got 2 of these. I think you want 2. I don't know if you want 3, but I think you definitely want 2, at least 1. And then I'm running 2 of the Opus 3 Phoenix. If I could run 3 of this card, I'd want to. So you choose a forward of cost 2 or less in your break zone, play it on the field, deal 2,000 damage to all the forwards opponent controls. This is really a card that does everything this deck wants and needs. You can play it aggressively by getting something out of your break zone on your turn and having another forward that might be attacking like a soul. You could play it defensively and bring back the starter Warrior of Light and give all your forwards plus 2,000 and deal 2,000 damage to all your opponent's forwards. And then now you're going to block very, very successfully. I just really like what Phoenix offers, and I like running 2 because usually when you get 1 off, that advantage swing is enough to either get you back in the game or win the game. 3, I would love to find a way to get those in, but I'm currently running 2 and it seems to work out okay. The only monster that we're running is Varuna, a new one from Opus 7, and a card that looked really cool when we saw it spoiled, and then kind of just wasn't as great as I thought at first, but in this list, it really works out well. It's undercosted. Varuna, it's just a monster until you deal damage with one of your forwards, and then it becomes a forward with 8,000 power and Brave. So with Gadot out, it has 10,000 power and Brave, and it can just get bigger with other anthems that we have in this deck. It's really kind of a neat card. I like it in this list. I think 2 is fine. You could possibly drop it to 1. A cool way to play this card is to have it out there, have 2 forwards, and have Varuna, and then you play a Warrior of Light starter card and get in there for attacks, and Varuna becomes a forward, and hey, all of a sudden, Warrior of Light now has haste, because now he's your 4th forward. So I like him for that reason. I think he's good at 2, and sometimes he's really, really annoying to deal with when he gets online. Alright, I'm running 17 backups in this list, and I think that's fine. Aggro decks sometimes want you to run a lot of forwards, and maybe that's an oversight on mine. I've only got 22 forwards, but we've got some recursion that can get our forwards back in the game, and this deck really feels good when you get 3 or 4 backups out. So I'm wanting to maximize it. I get 3 or 4 backups, and a lot of really good utility comes from my backup line. So I've got 17 in there. Let's start with 3 Vermilion Bird, the CK Tuna. We call her Big Tuna down here, and I'm running 3. It seems greedy. It's a 6-drop backup, but I'll tell you what, I love this card. It is so, so powerful. If a forward is dealt damage by your fire summons, damage decreases by 1,000 instead. That's extremely important. That makes Phoenix get rid of Layla and any Viking she's brought into play. And when Vermilion Bird Lassie enters the field, you may search for 1 fire summon that costs 4 or less and cast it without paying the cost. If you don't, I don't know why you wouldn't cast it, but if you can't just put it in your hand. So any summon that we're running can be found with this backup. That makes Belias an option. It makes both Bahamuts an option. So usually for 6 CP, what you're getting is a backup that makes your summons more powerful, and you get to cast 1 for free. You could also choose Phoenix, and maybe you have a Warrior Light on board already. You could Phoenix Soul back into play. So for 6 CP, you've gotten a forward, and you've marked all your opponent's forwards with damage. I mean, that just feels really good. This card is good. I was running 2, and it just wanted to do it every single game, so I upped to 3. I think you should run 3. I think you should definitely run 2 and no fewer. She's a really, really good card. Next here is 3 Lebro. Fire forwards you control gain 1,000 power. As we've walked through this list, hopefully by now you see that that's a very relevant ability, and I'm running 3 of her as well because I want to see that. I want to see that hopefully with Lunith every single game. All the other backups cost 2 CP. Let's just look at 2 of Selfie. choose an attacking forward. It gains 2,000 power to end the turn. That really messes with your opponent if you leave that backup and the resources available. They're just going to look at every single attacker you have and say, I probably can't block that. And that's what you want your opponent to feel like. You want them to feel the pressure from your forward attack. So very good card. Wouldn't be mad if you were running 3. I'm running 2. Next, we have an Opus 7 backup that I've come to really enjoy. This is 2 Samurai. When Samurai enters the field, choose a fire forward, it gains 2,000 power, and Brave. That's a great set of abilities. That's sticking in the theme of this deck. Samurai can also be broken. You get the same effect again, 2,000 power and Brave, but you have to wait until you have 5 points of damage or more. If you're running this deck, get used to taking 5 points of damage. That's something that you'll take 5 points, you'll take 6 points every single game because you're probably going to hang 7 on your opponent. You just have to make sure you do that and not lose. But Samurai's fine. There's really not a downside to this card. I'm running 2 of them. I'm also running 2 of a classic here, Opus 2 Sage. When Sage enters the field, choose a forward. It gains haste until end of turn. What I'll say about this card, don't be afraid to play it turn 1 if you don't have any forwards. You want to get a turn 1 backup down. If this is the only one that you see that's efficient to play it. It's okay not to hit anything with haste. It's more important to get a turn 1 backup. And if you miss with this Sage, you're going to find plenty of haste later in the game. So just, it's a good turn 1 backup. But also, man, if you play a Godot and you play another forward, and then you play a Sage on that Godot, it just really ramps up and starts to snowball this deck. So 2, I think, are the right number here. I'm also running 2 of Opus 5 Ninja. If you wanted to run 3 of this card, I would not be mad at you. Put Ninja in the break zone, choose a forward, it cannot block this turn. That's going to be a card that could potentially win you a game because you're likely to find a situation here where you've gotten your opponent to 6 points of damage and somehow they've slowed the game down and they've stabilized. If you've got a Ninja and you take their big blocker out of the equation, you might be winning at that point. So I like running 2, but again, I'd say you might be able to run 3 here if that's a style that you're more comfortable with. And then the last backup is 3 of Meath. Meath is great. Meath is such a good card. Another Opus 7 card, 2 CP. When it enters the field, you may discard 1 card. For the longest time, for some reason, I thought it had to be a forward. It's not. You just get to discard any card. If you do, search for a forward of the same cost as the discarded card, add it to your hand. This is an excellent way to recycle a light wall when you already have one in play and for some reason you just can't get rid of that light wall to keep doing more light wall things. But you could turn that light wall in hand into an Aegis or to a Godot. Or if you've already got a soul on board and you've got 2 more soul in hand, get rid of one and get a Warrior Light or get Lednar, get something that you want better. It's just such a good way of finding the forward that you need when this deck really wants you to have 4s out at all times. So I like running 3 of this card. I was running 2. I liked it so much I ran it up to 3. I'd say it belongs in the list at whatever quantity. That's up to you. And that's the list, guys. Thanks for watching. If you're playing this deck, I'd recommend it. So I say this with a little hesitation. I recommend it to new players because looking on ffdex.com, the non-foil low that they calculate is under $22. So this is just the most budget-appropriate way that anyone could get into competitive Final Fantasy. However, aggro is not it's not a knuckle-dragging, dumb-brain deck. If you want to be really good at this, when you push, your aggression really determines when you're going to win or lose. And there's not. The reason I think it's a competitive deck is because it's not completely unforgiving if you push too early or if you push too late. It's a little forgiving because it runs so smooth. The CP cost is so low that if you really establish backups, you can forgive yourself for missing on when you're supposed to be aggressive. So it's a little skill intensive. So I'd recommend it to new players, but I would also say that you may want to put a lot of reps in if you're not familiar with aggro in a card game or if you're just new to this game. What your opponent is playing is going to matter, and this is not a deck that you just play whatever is the best card in your hand and pass a turn. It requires some strategy and some knowledge, but the longer you play it, this is not a extremely big brain deck. It's not extremely mechanically heavy. For example, there's no special abilities, so there's no crazy lines or math that you have to worry too much about. I think it's very fun in that sense. So I'd recommend it for aggro players. I think it's a great way of playing Fire, too. If you're interested in playing Fire competitively, now you have a chance since Opus 2 is finally back. But that's our Mono Fire Warrior of Light list. Thanks as always for tuning in. We've done several other Opus 7 meta lists leading into this competitive season. I'm sure we'll discover some more along the way. So thanks for watching. Thanks for keeping up with us, and we will see you soon.